we did that in English. And by the end of the season, I was doing Enrico badly, because my voice was in a crack. It was neither baritone, neither bass, and bass baritone it was a little high to be a bass baritone, a little low to be bass. So it was in a weird crack, and the high G's just sounded horrible. But the funny thing about that is that the director of that camp, whose name was Roger Cantrell, big shout out to brother Roger. Thanks for the gig, Roger. Was called by a gentleman by the name of Robert Swedberg. Thanks, Bob. And they got together, and Bob said, "I've lost my bass baritone. Do you have a bass baritone?" "Why, yes, I do." So I get a call at home. I'm sleeping late that day because my waiter job down the road, and they said, "How do you feel about a 9-month contract in the capital of the state is Charlotte, North Carolina." Sorry, Charlotteans, I really apologize for that little bit mental slip. And I was there for 2 years, and we did school shows. And let me tell you something. Tell you a little secret. If you want to learn how to work an audience full of elementary school kids, oh dear, oh my God, right? I mean, okay, so I'll give you a case in point. My second year, the first year we did a Devil's Tale or a cut down version of Faust, and I got to do Mephistopheles. And then the next year, because my voice was already in the crack, they let me do Papageno and the Magic Flute. And the kids love Papageno. They just love Papageno because I came from right in the middle of it, and I'm skipping around. Der Vogelfänger bin ich ja stets lustig. We didn't sing it German, not really. I'd give my finest feather to find a pretty wife. But Ach, ich fühl's, otherwise known in English as Ah, I Feel, was in a cut down version.
Sure.
Cut down. Took the beginning, took the end, cut down all the middle, all the pretty stuff, squashed them together. The aria was 27 seconds long. 27 seconds. And it was still too long. About 10 seconds, that little G minor, blong, blong, blong. You can see the kids going.
Yep. Too slow.
It's too slow. It's too slow. It's too slow. They didn't like it.
With those young artist programs, with the school programs, I was a teacher, and I was when I did New Jersey, we used to do those programs. 45-minute. That's it.
That's it.
They're
because they have to have time to get And this was in the days of 50 or 55 minutes. We did a 50-minute Magic Flute, and Papageno was the star. And it was from there that I actually auditioned. Do you remember the People's Express?
I've heard of them.
I should have had stock in them because I ended up going back and forth to New York several times from Greensboro. And I ended up getting a gig. I got the San Francisco Opera Marilla program, at the time the Western Opera Theater Tour, and then the Adler Fellowship. And so I was out there for 5 full years.
Now, what did you learn in your young artist days? What are some of the lessons that you can do? We have a lot of young singers who come to the show, and people who are just starting their career, and they can learn so much from someone who's been out there. And
do I? Okay. I'm going to 2 things. Sing well, be a good colleague. And be a good colleague means a lot of things. Don't be a jerk. Don't be a jerk. But don't be a jerk is a big thing. You don't get to go in and intimidate people. You don't get to go in and this is not a competition. This is an art form. Yes, there are competitions in it, and that's unfortunate because they usually hand out a lot of money. And young singers today have it so awful because there's just not the work out there that there used to be. They're just not. And I think I'm going to stick with those 2. Just sing well, and singing well. It's going to take you, especially men. It's going to take you a few years. It doesn't matter what you do. You're not going to be as mature. A 30-year-old baritone is not going to be as mature as a 30-year-old lyric coloratura, because the lyric coloratura jumps fully formed from her mother's womb singing the doll song. That's just the way it goes. It's not fair. I had a wonderful conversation. This is the year I met my wife down in up in Cooperstown, and I took this guy out to the Friendlies in Cooperstown and was talking him off the roof. It's not fair. So and so has got this Met contract, and she's this and she's that. And I said, it's not fair. No, it's not. But it all evens out in the end. That guy's now at the Met, and she is not. And is it fair? No, but it's the way it is. It's just the way it is.
This is biology.
It is.
Now, how old were you when your voice really found its core?
I'm still waiting.
I love it.
Thank you. We set that one up. He called me about that one. We set that joke up. 35.
Okay.
And I fully admit I blossomed late, but 35 is just about right for a man's voice. Sometimes tenors, it seems because of the higher and the higher the kind of the way that works, the kind of vocal span and the size of the vocal cords and the height of the voice. And sometimes basses go to 40. You can hear a young bass and you go, that's almost there.
Like a fine wine. They
age. And then 5 years later you go, dude, what happened to you? Oh, well, I turned 40. Is what happened. 35 is about right. And young guys should just be patient. Be patient. I heard it said years ago. His name was Bill Powers, and it's not the Bill.
I just did a show with Bill Power on tour this year. The last 2 years I was on the road with him. He's still singing.
Bill Powers?
Yeah.
Do you have his number?
I do.
I love. He was
great
so.
Guy. Great
You know what? I'm going to shout out to Bill Powers because by
Lives
God,
in Chicago, yeah.
he told me the truth. Was the one that was married to Larimore?
Yeah. That's right.
Okay, just checking the same.
We
one.
just did he did a Scarpia recent, not like 2 years
That's
ago.
the first thing I sang with him. Friends, you're getting to see this live. We didn't plan this.
Bill
Powers.
He still does a really good Barbara Seville. He's very funny. Great actor.
He's a great actor. He's a beast on stage. Yeah. So I'm coming in and I'm thinking I'm a Scarpia. Now I'm 25 or 24, maybe 25. But I'm learning Scarpia at 24, 25. Learn the roles. Look, if you got your hockey hot to do a role, go learn it. Nothing's going to happen to you by learning a role. What's going to happen is if you try to perform that role, all right? Because you get your juices flowing and you end up getting really excited and blowing your wad. You blow out your voice, and you don't want to do that. So Bill Powers and I were doing Tosca together, as chance would have it. And Bill is, he's got a gruff, kind of gravelly voice, and he had studied with some of my heroes. He had studied with George London.
Wow. Yep.
And he said to me, a couple things. He said, here's how it goes. Small roles in small places, big roles in small places, small roles in big places, big roles in big places. And of course, medium, you just sort of fill it in there. And that made perfect sense. He said, but you got to understand. Later, he said, and I couldn't receive it. I couldn't hear it.
Of course.
Because I was 24 and I knew everything. If you're 24 and you know everything, you don't. Sorry. I don't like hurting your feelings, but you don't know anything. So we're sitting there, and he says to me, look, you're just not going to be able to sing the big stuff that you want to sing for a while. Learn how to drive a truck. Just do something else. I was hurt. I thought, and I really didn't. I never had to. But it was a slugfest. You get into the Maryland program and you're trying to fight and you're ambitious as all get out and you want this role and somebody else gets it and you want that role and somebody else gets it. You're screaming and yelling and people are telling you, you're hard to work with. And Sally Billinghurst did me a big favor and took me aside. Mark, you're so difficult. She's from New Zealand. You're difficult. I am not difficult. By the way, if you scream the phrase, I am not difficult, probably not true. Anyway. Bill Powers. Did I cover your...
I think so.
Did I catch your...
So. We're just going to keep going. I love this.
All right,
this is
all right, man.
Yeah, Bill Powers won he was a grand finalist in the Met competition the same year as Ronald Naldi was, too.
Oh, my gosh.
They're both really good friends of
wow.
mine. So I called Ronald while Bill and I were having a beer together in a hotel in South Carolina after a show. And we all caught up. It was the craziest thing.
When I was in, I did four shows in Charlotte, North Carolina, all with the Charlotte Opera Association, which became Opera Carolina, in case there's any confusion. And I since did a couple of really good shows with them, and he was the first, and Heather Thompson was doing Tosca, and Rick Estes was doing Cavaradossi, and he and I hooked up on Facebook, and he's doing great. He's been teaching for a billion years. Anything else out of there?
Yeah, so your young artist days are coming to an end. You finish up that period of your life.
Right.
Describe the next chapter, because
that's got to be. I had to, and I think this has to happen to everybody. You're either on a trajectory like this that's really smooth but kind of, or it goes like this and you go, and that's what happened to me. The way I describe it is that my ego was writing checks that my talent couldn't cash, and I was difficult. I was hard to work with. I was arrogant. I was frightened, and when I'm frightened, I'm more arrogant. It's just the way it seems to work out. And I sort of crashed and burned on multiple addictions. There, it's out in the open. You happy? Sorry, I don't know why I'm not blaming you. Really not. Oh, that was something very important. Pick it up later.
Probably a phone.
Probably your table. I probably ruined it. And somewhere in around 88, I came to kind of a crisis point in my life and in my marriage and in my faith and stuff, and somewhere in there I just kind of imploded. My first son was born, who I just played golf with, and he's 31 now. That was really great, but my career was imploding, and we had decided to move to the New York area. We moved to the New York area. Meanwhile, that first marriage was ending in flames, and I met Jerome Hines right around 1992. And if anybody knows anything about Jerome Hines, not only was he a great bass, he was a great man. He was a man of intense, sometimes peculiar faith. His wife was amazing. They were amazing people. I've had many meals in their home. I loved the man. I loved the man. And he brought me on board with what was called Opera Music Theater International, and there's been some push to start that up again. And they some people have contacted me about kind of heading it up, and I thought if there's some interest in that should be something to do. But anyway, the thing that was happening is that all of these things were colliding. In the meantime, and I know we're going to get to this at some point, I did his opera for the first time, but I did the role of Eliakim, which is the high priest, the bad guy. He does all the things. He manipulates times and events, and you get a big aria. And I think the guy that did it at the Metropolitan Opera when they did it at the Met was Ezio Flagello, who's just wonderful. So you're walking in pretty big shoes, and meanwhile he and I had these kind of interesting talks about my character defects that seemed to these obstacles that would get in my way of having what should have been a better career by that time. Meanwhile, he's also getting me vocally in shape, and it happened like this. I'm going to aim this away from the microphone because I don't want to hurt anybody. So, you know what? I can do it two ways. So, I come in there to the place on Broad Street in Newark, right? And I come in singing, put it forward, put it here, right? Which is, that actually sounds like, what's that? Oh, that's a mosquito. That's what that sounds like. Oh, sorry, there's another one. Just it's what it's precious. And I'm singing this Verdi piece. And he was so funny. He sat down on that ugly green couch, and he said, and in his own way, this is my best Jerome Hines. And he said, well, Mark, you seem to use that kind of very forward technique that that some of the great people, and he named 4 or 5 people, and I thought, wow, that's nice to be in those categories. But the people that I remember that had big careers in the big business, the big careers, the Leonard Warrens and the Robert Merrills, and I went, oh, that's right, he knew them.
Yeah.
He sang with those guys. Oh dear, right? This Jerome Hines reared back in the right key and sang Baritone. It was the loudest thing. I'm sure I had a nosebleed. I'm sure of it. The foundations of the building were shaking. My ears were hurting. My eyes were watering. But it was funny because I guess because of my Scottish nature, he was talking about business. And when you talk about business, you have my attention. Those had the big careers. Those were the big careers. And for the first time, since my other father was actually trying to lead me in this direction, but there was something about the way it clicked with me. My father was a real pedagogue. He could, he'd point you this way and that way, and and if you didn't want to go, and it's Dad. Dad doesn't know anything.
It's very difficult.
It's Dad. It's Dad. He doesn't know anything. And he's long since passed, so he's having a real good laugh over this. And I'm being facetious, by the way. My father was brilliant. So, meanwhile, Jerry started teaching me. And Jerry threw a barrage of words. If any of you know, he wrote many, many books. He wrote books on chemistry. He wrote books on math.
Brilliant man, yeah.
Brilliant man. He had a chemistry set in his basement. I don't know why it hadn't blown up. But, I'm going to make a bomb, Mark, and I would like you to help me. No, sir, thank you. And Lucia was just so patient with it. Jerry, please don't make a bomb. I don't like bomb in the house. You had the beautiful Genovese accent, and it was so cute when they got upset with each other. So Jerry would start teaching me, and the one that clicked, you try to feel like a bubble. Well, I don't want to feel like a bubble. Try to feel the vowels coming over the mouth. And the one that he got me with was when he says, Enrico Caruso called it the square throat. And I did this and I went. And I opened and I pulled those vocal folds to the point to where I could feel the 4 corners. And for some reason I said, it's not really a square, is it? It's actually a rhomboid. Which he remembered. And ladies and gentlemen, it's in his book. In one of his books, there's a foreword, and it says, thank you to Mark Delavan for reminding me that Enrico Caruso's square throat is actually a rhomboid. Who cares? The point was the 4 corners. Feeling the 4 corners. If one can pull the 4 corners and you feel the 4 corners pulling, you're going to have an open sound. Period. That was the beginning. It wasn't very much longer than that. I got my first city opera. No, it wasn't my first city opera. As I mentioned, 88 was a big year. I did my my New York City opera debut in 1988 in the role of Paul Fontaine in Zygmunt Romberg's The Desert Song. I had another 37-second aria, but that was actually written. It was actually 37. Oh, pretty maid of France, my Margot. Da 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 da. 37 seconds. Would you like me to sing it for you? No, you wouldn't. Promise. Very boring. Anyway, but we all got to sing a big ensemble of All Alone. Da, da, da. It's a great piece. Richard White and I became famous friends. Richard White's, for those of you who remember the original Beauty and the Beast cartoon, the voice of Gaston was a gentleman by the name of Richard White, who did a lot of stuff on Broadway, did a lot of stuff at City Opera. He was the Donnie Lowe. He did all of those things. He did the New Moon that was on TV. He was a fantastic actor and a real animal stage. I learned a lot from him. But that was my debut, and then I came in kind of kicking and squalling, saying, I want this and I want that. And they said, thank you very much. There's the door. So I came back, and so a few years later, they said, are you ready? I did this master class with Frank Corsaro. Frank Corsaro was a famous director, great artist. a wild man. Frank Corsaro is the only guy that I ever saw direct barefooted. He would take his shoes off and he'd walk around. I need to feel my feet on the ground. I need to feel grounded. Wonderful character. Wonderful man. And he and I had done some work together. I did no, this was it. We were doing a master class at Ampti. And I was learning how to do self-editing. I had gotten some help for my multiple addictions that I talked to you about. And I had started to listen to the inner editor that said, don't say that. One of the great things about taking on a spiritual journey like one I'm alluding to is you buy time. And one of the cool things about that is I bought 4 seconds. I managed to get 4 seconds, the 4 seconds between the impulse and the action. When, and somebody described it this way, you're driving down the highway, right? And you're driving and some guy pulls you off and the first thing you do is you shake your fist at him and maybe you give him that middle finger salute and you drive up next to him and you're ready to cuss him out. He turns out to be 6'5", 270 and glaring at you like, ugh. You're thinking, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Now, if you had 4 seconds, if you could rewind that, you had that 4 seconds, maybe he's in a hurry. Oh, I wish he hadn't done that. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm over it. Then that guy goes his way, you go your way, and it's a wonderful thing. I bought 4 seconds. It cost about $1.5 million, by the way. Just telling you. I had to take out a loan. Not really. It's funny. Is this sound okay? I keep ducking away my head. Great. Anyway. So Frank comes in, and I'm doing a master class, and I think, what I'm going to do? I'm going to do Iago, because I've got an Iago come up, and I need help. I'm doing a small Iago with Ars Musica. Remember them? Frank
I used to work with him.
Idolo Marchini. Yeah. Shout out to Idolo.
Idolo hired me for my first job as a ringer right out of college. It was one of the first ringer gigs I did, and I got to meet him. He moved to Paris now.
He was in Germany the last time I checked in, and so apparently he moved to shout out. And he gave me a job doing Iago, and I thought I need a little help on the thing, and so I came in and did the credo, and I thought, and Frank in his own inimitable fashion leans over and he goes, "Wow." You're not supposed to say that in a master class, by the way. That's about the best credo I've ever heard. Well, thank you, sir. He said, I think you should sing for City Opera. Now, what I thought was, listen, I've sung for City Opera. They don't like me. I don't like them. I'm good with it. You don't waste your time. But 4 seconds kicked in, and what I ended up saying was, thank you, sir. That would be fine, sir. Note that. This will come up later. All right. He said, I'll tell you what. I'll set it up. And I said, inside? I said, no, you won't. No, you won't. You're going to walk out of here. You're going to forget me. And you're going to walk away. And that's going to be that. What I said was, that would be fine. Thank you, sir. Which is handy, kids.
It takes so long to get that.
It takes so long to get that.
And perspective.
And it takes a second at a time. The first second, that's not good, but it's better than what you're thinking. So he set it up. And I went in there, and I sang the Toreador song, and I sang the second verse of Di Provenza. I wore my cocoa brown 3-piece suit. I don't remember anything special about it. But what they said, they called my manager, and they called me at this place that I was living, which was actually Ampti. I was actually at one point for 8 months, I did not have an address. I was living in the back room at Ampti because there was nothing left. The divorce, between the divorce and money and no jobs and none of this and no prospects, it was not a good time. So they called me there and said, I need to talk to Mark, and my agent, who's very funny. It was John Miller at the time. John Miller, I have a lot of fun. I love John Miller, and he said, Mark, guess what they said? And he said for the 93. Was it 93? Yes, 93-94 season. They offered me a full year's worth of work. They offered me six or seven Toreadors. They offered me they offered me some Baron Dufols, which is not a wonderful role, but if it's a paycheck and it's work. And kids, if you don't want to take small roles, what makes you think you're so special? Did I say that? Should I say it again? What makes you think you're so? Take the small roles. Yes, you're a big role singer. Everybody knows it. Everybody in your church choir says you're wonderful, and you are. But you're going to need to learn the stage and learn the craft. And you learn the craft. Small roles, small places. Big roles, small places. Small roles, small places. Small roles, big places. Did I get that?
We get the idea. That's
You get the idea, all right? So,
sage advice.
I don't remember anything special about the audition except that they called and they said the following. They didn't say, wow, that was impressive. They said, what happened to Mark? In other words, there was a change. There was a dramatic, spiritual, metaphysical change, if you will. And I was beginning to trust. And it was that's hard. When you get kicked around a little bit, that's difficult. And then I did that year, but in that year they wanted me to come in the middle and audition for Enrico. I think I should tell that story. So in Enrico, I was doing the role of Enrico, and guess who was doing the role of Raimondo?
Who?
Buddy of yours, Kevin Short.
He was just on the show last.
Yes, I know. Wasn't he fun?
Always fun.
Did he show you his ring?
I know about it.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, he has
Hall of
a
Fame
wrestling Hall of Fame ring, and he will pick up and fireman's carry anybody. He has picked me up and full squatted me 3 times. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not small. Not small. Okay.
Kevin is an impressive guy.
Kevin is an impressive guy and funny. One of the funniest men I've ever known. So, so the costume that he wore was a traditional kind of a black priest outfit, but he had this odd reddish wig, not red like you, but reddish wig. So try to imagine this beautiful African-American man with a red wig on that came down and flipped under. And he came in with his Bible, and he started doing this little dance. And he said, Reverend Leroy wants to preach. And we are in. Kevin, if you're out there, you need to call in and do the Reverend Leroy. You got to do it. Got to do it, my friend. Good friend. He and I ended up doing the world premiere of the Balcom, A Wedding. He and I had roles in that, which was fun to see him. He and I have the unique privilege of having seen The Incredibles, the 2004 Incredibles. I
love that movie.
I'm sorry, it's a great movie.
My kids love it too.
And that was kind of how point A to point B happened, and how, the rest is kind of history. My Met debut was 2000. Sweeney Todd was 2004.
So you corrected the technical.
Correct.
You got the rhomboid worked out with Jerome Hines. You got your spiritual self in line.
As much as one can,
Right.
because it's a continuing process.
So now you take your free. You could tell something's different when they offer you those big roles. The roles start to change.
Yeah.
You start to get these great opportunities. What was it like to make your Met debut?
Oh, I'll tell you this. If this was not telecast, I would use a phrase, scared blankless. We good?
You can say it.
You know what? It doesn't, yeah. Anyway, maybe I will. Maybe I'll swear later. What do you think? I'm telling you, that was, first of all, let me tell you who the cast was. The great bass Ho-Jan Tiang was doing the role of the king of Egypt, not Ramses. There was a Russian who wasn't very good, but we won't get into that. Luciano Pavarotti was doing Radames. My friend, but very famous at the time, Deb Voigt, was doing Aida. Phenomenally well. Olga Borodina was doing the role of Amneris, and here I walk in going, okay. Let me tell you what it was like. It was like being thrust on the court, on the basketball court with the 1990s Bulls. You either shoot, pass, or get the hell out of the way. And I thought, I want to be a part of this team. James Levine was conducting. Oh my God. Doesn't matter what you think of him. That man was a great conductor and a great musician. it was, and I decided to embrace it all. And just, if you're terrified, be terrified. Be terrified. Go in, be terrified. I sang well, and the performances went really well. I got fantastic notices. My good friend from the country music world, Larry Gatlin, actually showed up at the debut itself. He was my wife's date, and he's a funny man. There was a standing ovation at the end of it, and he stood with the rest of it, and some woman reached up and grabbed him and started shaking him. And he's a Texan, so he turned around. Mama, quit pushing me. Everybody else is standing. Just let it be. Perfect. It couldn't. It was a dream. It was a dream, and it was a beginning of a very, very long run at the Met that I'm just grateful.
What did that do for your confidence?
Get
to that first performance.
Once I got over just the terror of it all, and I started talking to people and started realizing that it's like the major leaguers say: if you belong, you belong. If you're meant to be a Yankee, you're meant to be a Yankee. They say that about certain players, and they say he walks like a Yankee. He walks onto the mound like he owns it. And one of the keys for me, and this goes back to one of my favorite movies, which is Bull Durham.
Oh, I love Bull.
And Bull Durham. There's a line at the end. He's Kevin Costner's character has a black eye, and he's hung over, and he's sitting there talking to the lead Crash, the character of Nuke, and he says the key to this game is fear and arrogance, and he says fear and ignorance, and he goes, no, you hayseed, fear and arrogance. And he goes, I know, I just like getting you all worked up. But the point he's making is you got to walk a line. You got to walk a line. You gotta, I've got to be humble and confident at the same time. And I'm confident in what I do, but I have to stay humble and grateful. And I was humility was easy, because I remember one day, I don't remember when it was. I walked in and Marilyn Horne was sitting around, and I'm going, oh my God, And Luciano was lovely to me. He remembered me because I'd sung at his competition in 88 or 89, and he didn't remember me from the competition because there's been like a million. He said, "But you were in my competition, were you?" I said, "Yes." He said, I knew I remembered you." He didn't remember me, but to sing. To be able to sing with one of the greats from a generation before is a thrill. And then Deborah Voigt has been Deborah. I reminded Deborah one time a few years ago. I said, "Do you realize you and I have known each other longer than we haven't?" Wow. So she and I came up through the Maryland program in '85, and she was the big soprano, and she came on singing gangbusters at 23. Wow, 23. And that was. It was special. It was special. It was great. It was I claimed the poster. I got the poster and had it framed. Of course. And had all those people autograph. It's on my wall. And I have another one that was also pretty cool. I did and it was a trail of there was a really amazing pieces I got to do. I got to do Rigoletto in the park. I got to do Nabucco in the park. I got to do Forza in the house. I got to do Die Frau ohne Schatten in the house. I got to do the Zeffirelli Tosca. I got to do let's see what I got to do just about every Amonasro from 2001 till maybe 2014. So I mean it was a joy. It was a privilege. It was a privilege.
And you've done such a wide variety of roles in your career. Going through your biography, what are some of I know the Rigolettos and the Scarpias are some of the biggest. What are some of the hardest for you to prepare for? What were some of the hardest to get up on
Wotan.
stage? Oh, okay.
Wotan.
Let's talk about that.
Oh my God.
You're the only person I know who's actually done the role of the Major House. Aren't many people who do that role.
No. I realized when we revived the production. Greg Grimsley, who's a dear friend of mine, he and I were sitting around talking. I said, when this run is done, do you realize that you and I will be one of only 4 Wotans on the planet that have sung this role in this house? it since changed, and I think maybe there's a fifth or a sixth, but still, top 5 in the 21st century is pretty cool. Die Walküre, the middle one, is the hardest one to put together because of three things. Let's call it 3. First, the monologue. Monologue in the second act. One of Wagner's tools that, he does, if somebody is writing a novel series, they always have one section where they will go back and remind you of some of the other stuff that happened in the other novels, just in case you didn't read them. Oh, and by the way, such and such killed so and so because of this and that and the other thing. And you who didn't read those novels, well, now you're all caught up. Well, Wagner seems to think that's very important. So Wotan, in the second act of Die Walküre, goes back to the beginning of time. Not just the beginning of the opera, the beginning of time. Thank you. And he goes from there. He goes all the way through Rheingold, how, Loga's done this bad thing, and this bad thing, and this happened, and this happened. And by the way, I met Erda. And he looks over and says, by the way, she's your mom. Sorry, I hate to break it to you now, but she's your mom. And that's like the first third. This is 25 minutes of a very, very wordy piece, very interesting harmonically. Oh. And some moments of stark raving insanity where he starts screaming at Alberichen. That leads me to the second thing, which is pacing. It's okay. I clearly I'm a baseball fan. Sue me. It's like you're a starting pitcher, but you must get through 7 innings, and it would be better if you can get through the 9 innings because your bullpen is banged up. Oh, that's happening right now. Isn't that a coincidence? Yankees bullpen is a mess. Come on, guys, get it together. Sorry.
I'm a Mets fan. It's okay.
But I digress. So you don't care.
Bang them up.
Yeah. You guys won that last game of the series.
I haven't seen any baseball this summer. I've been doing virtual choir recordings 15 hours a week. It's nothing but editing.
Do you need a soloist? I'd love to do something.
We should definitely do it.
Yeah, let's talk.
I'd love to work with you.
Let's talk. So pacing. There are moments in that thing where you go crazy, and if you go fully crazy, you're not going to finish the opera. You can't. It starts als Junge low. Als Junge Liebe Lust mir Verblick verlangte nach Macht, mein Mut von jeher Wünsche wütend gejagt, gewann nicht mehr die Welt. Here we go. Unwissen trugvoll, Untreue übt dich, Bahn durch Verträge, was unheilbar, and on and on. But there's a moment where it feels like it wants to pull it out of you, and you get this feeling, and you go, up. If you do this, you will pay for it. And my opening night, I paid for it. I got to the end, and I'm going, oh my God. And I had the final one. No. That's number 2 is pacing, because pacing involves the third act. The third act is very, very long for Wotan, like 45 minutes. And there's a lot of you have to have your technique in place because you're yelling at them girls. You're just yelling at them girls and calling them every name in the book. And then you kick them off the stage. Hopefully they lead you off stage so you can get a big slam of water. Come back on. And then you have this incredibly long and so emotional scene with Brunhilde where you have to curse her, and then you've got the final thing, which is the Abschied. The Abschied will kill you if you let it, and if you haven't paced properly, it'll waste you. And it's
what was it like getting the call to do your first Wotan? What was that like, and when did you gravitate towards the Wagnerian repertoire?
I'll go with that question first, and then I'll get to the other one. I did my first Dutchman. I did my first Dutchman in '96. So I was still in my 30s, but it fit well with my voice. I have my father died my father died in December of 95, and the rehearsal started in January of 96. Do the math. It was not easy. And, grief is a funny thing. Grief is a really interesting chemical. It's meant to protect us from ourselves. I'm not going to get too heavy here, because I won't. I'll probably break down and do something goofy. There is a line in the middle of the duet that says, "So unbedingt wie könnte dich durchdringen für meine Leiden tiefstes Mitgefühl." I went over that line 10 times. And grief is such a powerful chemical to protect me from harming myself. It took me 10 times where I could remember that one line. What did that line take? 5 seconds? 10 times. I just couldn't get it in my head. And I'd worked on it before.
Sure.
But I get there, and there was the funeral and the moving the body, the burial. We had a service in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and then we went to San Antonio, Texas to bury my father in the family plot. And all the relatives got together and crying, and it was horrible. But it was my first big Wagner. Big Wagner. The next one would have been 2002. 2. And it was Parsifal in Chicago, which is big time.
Yep.
Big time. And it was a big production. It was with Matti Salminen and Catherine Malfitano and the late, great Gösta Winberg.
Oh, wow.
There's that man, YouTube, go look up Gösta Winberg. Now, Gösta
My
is not...
favorite dramatic tenors, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful man. Swedish. They have something in the water there. You want to look up some great singers, just look up the great Swedes. Kirsten Flagstad, my friend Nina Stemma, UC Björling, on and on. It's the water. I'm convinced it's the... I've sent away for the water, by the way. I've sent away for Swedish water. They just have the...
I have Swedish fish in there for that.
Oh, please, can you put it on the pizza? And that's where I started. So what was your first question on that?
So when you got your first
call
to do the, did you do your first one at the Met, or was it?
No.
Okay.
The first. This is
That would be crazy to do your first
This
one.
is the first. Well, it's almost that weird. I got the call for a 2011. There was going to be a ring cycle, and I got the call, and they said, and I kind of went, "Ooh, I'm scared of this. And it was withdrawn. And David and I have had many laughs over this. David Gockley, he wasn't sure about me. There was no stuff out there to prove that I could sing Wotan. It was that Francesca Tambello had faith in me, and and Donald Runnicles had faith in me, and they wanted me to be their Wotan. Plus, they wanted it to be scene chewing, tearing up the scenery, and they know I'm their boy. I will tear up scenery, and he was terrific. Donald was terrific. Donald said, "I want to coach this with you," in his gentle Scottish accent. "I want to coach this with you," and I happened to be there doing something. No, they flew me out. And I got probably $10,000 worth of coachings, and got to stay at the inn at the opera. And I went in and I did get him one. I got a really good joke on him. He walked in and he said, "So Mark, have you worked on this?" And I said, "Donald, I don't know a note of it." And he went, and I said, "I'm just kidding. I worked my ass off on it." And then somebody else came in and I retold him the story, and he said it quite profanely, what he was actually thinking. That miserable piece of... And we worked, and he said something in that, and I have this on tape, and I never forgot it. And I'm reading the text, and I'm reading, kind of translating, and I said, "Does that word mean what I think it..." "Oh, yes, that's exactly what it means." I said, "He's not a very nice God." And he said the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. He said, it's not that. He's just a very human God." I thought that sums it up. It's just the wonderful thing about the gods, and I've heard people complain, "Oh, the gods, they're so human. And they're so..." Oh, yeah, of course my phone goes off. Perfect.
It's Wagner.
Is that it? while I'm sitting here, I'm going to turn it off so that doesn't happen. Oh, Raphael Giglio.
Oh,
We were just talking about him.
hey, Raphael. A fine minister and a fine musician. as
Fine
well.
musician. You know what? I will check your text. I promise. I will not leave this undone. Go on there and ask me a question. Would you do that, Raphael?
While
please?
we're stopped here, Adrian Ostrander and Chap Ostrander say hello. They were at your Desert Song production. They're good friends of mine, both wonderful percussionists, and they welcome the Ostranders.
How much did you pay? I need to give you your money back. Thank you. That was lovely. That's a nice memory. That's 1980, 89, 88 or 89, 88. And then the season was canceled. I was supposed to do it again, and the season was canceled. They went on strike. All that kind of stuff. So you were back to Wagner. We're back to Wagner.
Yeah, this is.
So it was. So he coached me through every note. Every note of that. And then it came and went, and I remember walking off the stage and going, they didn't really like me. And he says, Mark, you don't need to worry about that. This is Rheingold. Wotan is an ass in Rheingold. You earn your stripes when you do Die Walküre.
Okay.
And I said, well, that's not very, I don't like that. He said, don't worry about that. You're in for the long haul. And it's a long song. So my next foray was supposed to be the Rheingold. The 2011 was a cycle. 2008, I think, was the Rhine. It was either 2007 or 2008 was the Rheingold in San Francisco. That was my first Wotan of any kind. And then 2010 was going to be Die Walküre. Meanwhile, I got an opportunity in Berlin to do a ringlet, where it was basically 2 cycles over 4 nights, double cast, and I was going to throw together Die Walküre. Now, friends, that's a little bit like trying to put together a nuclear bomb with a gun to your head and it raining in the dark. Now, the fortunate thing was we had a piano in our house, and my wife must have spent hours. We sent the kids out to play in the swing. They had a swing in that little play, and she would just go over it and over and over it, and just trying to cram that monologue and the third act, and
I
just
can't
get that
imagine
in my
a better
head.
coach in there.
Oh yeah, she was indispensable. I could not have done it without. If it had been me on my own, I probably would have canceled. Really would have canceled. And man, we did that, worked that, and then that was very, very successful. That was where I got the opportunity to realize you can't push it. And then Siegfried came along at a really weird time. There was some health issues. There was and listen, this is life on life's terms. Like 2010 was a rough year. My wife had some cancer surgery. And I blew out my right knee on stage doing Iago, trying to do something really cute. I did opening night in a wheelchair.
Someone was in that.
Joyce
friend of
DiDonato
mine
has
was in
nothing
that.
on me. Okay.
So in the production, you blew out your knee, huh?
The dress rehearsal. In fact, my 2 boys were there, and they were like,
no.
oh yeah, they saw that.
That was Opera Philadelphia, I believe, right?
That's correct. That was correct. My mother-in-law was there. It was very strange, and I'm walking around, and my knee is stuck in an L. Meanwhile, I'm supposed to be learning Die Liebe der Danae by Strauss and Siegfried. To say that it didn't get the job done is a gross understatement, and it cost me the faith of a really important opera company, and I deeply and profoundly regret that. If I had it to do it over again, I wouldn't take no for. I tried to cancel this. I tried to cancel. I said, this is not going to be ready. It's just not going to be ready. I'm sorry. Life happens. Shit happens. See, I told you I'd say something. Life happened. You don't plan for cancer surgery. You don't plan to blow your knee out. You plan to work on the roles, and life happened. And it cost me some very important relationships in the business, and that's one of my biggest regrets. I probably should have just said I can't do this. And so consequently, the Siegfried they say about the first ring cycle is that it's probably going to be the rehearsals that kill you, and not the thing. But it was such an intense experience. One of the producers, Christina Flanagan, is a dear friend of the family, and they were behind it to the point to where there was all kinds of stuff happening behind the scenes that we were just privy to, and there was stuff up all over the city. There were banners. I would drive down the street and there would be, okay, what was mine? My buddy Gordon Hawkins was doing Albrecht, so he was on the Rheingold poster. And Gordy is just such a beautiful man. He's got his arms out. He's got that big $10,000 smile. And there's Gordon Hawkins doing Albrecht. I think I was Die Walküre. And I believe the guy that did Zygmunt the year before was the guy on the Siegfried poster, because they didn't have any knowledge of the Siegfrieds. They didn't know who's going to be the Siegfried. And Nina Stemma was Gerda Demro. And we were all over had banners hanging up on the light posts. We made money. It made money. There were posters that were made, these wonderful, weird kind of minimalist posters, and we all got posters and had each other sign them and framed them. That's on my wall. That's one of those things that if the house is burning down, I go and get that poster, and I get some photographs of me and Jerome Hines and me and Cheryl Mills and all of that stuff. Yeah, it was intense. And then I ended up doing it again at the Metropolitan Opera with Deb Voigt. I got to do it with Deb Voigt, and Stephanie Blythe was my Fricka, who is one of the funniest women. I hope we get to this question soon, but I want to throw a shout out to Stephanie Blythe and what a wonderful person she is.
I've got a Stephanie Blythe story. When I was a freshman in college, she took a long time to figure out she wanted to go into music for her career. So I think she changed majors a bunch of times at the Crane School of Music. And I was a freshman, a young little freshman, and I sang in an a cappella group, and we backed Stephanie Blythe singing Walking on Broken Glass with a little string ensemble, and I was in the little a cappella choir, and I have it on VHS.
Of course you do. Somebody out there will take that VHS and put that to digital.
And we knew that was a voice of great significance. Even back then, the voice shook the rafters. I'd never heard a voice like that before.
Two stories about Stephanie Blythe. First of all, Stephanie Blythe, not only was she a great Fricka, she was, first of all, she just brought the thunder. She brought the thunder. You think, Donner means thunder. No, it doesn't either. Fricka means thunder. She brought the thunder. And in that Met production, she comes out on this huge throne, and she gets scooted out there. Behind the scenes, she told me, she said, "Mark, this is terrifying. I'm in terror the whole time. You wouldn't know it. She's the toughest one. She's married to a former wrestler.
Yeah.
And he wow. I adore him. Anyway, so she and I later, this last spring, she and I did Falstaff together, and she was Mistress Quickly. And she, ladies and gentlemen, she is one of the funniest women on planet Earth. She took, before she left it, she had that big Reverend Mingino. She took a hunk of cake and just, she was just doing stuff. She and I got to play on stage, and she said she was so encouraging. She was so encouraging to me, and I'm a little older than her, so that, but she didn't have any idea how much I needed that, and when the pandemic started, and everybody, I know we'll get to this, but when the pandemic started, somebody sent me a video, and if you want to hear some great singing, she's on Facebook. And she sent out, and it was a shout out to Justino Diaz, of all people, who else I sang with. And it's a shout out to Justino Diaz, and she just looked into the camera and said, tomorrow. And she took her little $3,000 ukulele and sang it like 6 octaves below. The sun will come out tomorrow. Bet your bottom dollar that tomorrow. And it was incredible, and if you know Stephanie, if she's doing that, it's from the heart. It's from the heart, and it changed a lot of what I did, and I made a decision based on something she did, based on that.
I saw her do a. She was Dolly in Hello Dolly. I mean,
Oh.
I mean, she can sing anything. Anything.
I would love to do Mr. What's his name with her. If anybody's thinking about something to do, get it with me and her, and we'll.
Now you like Broadway music.
I love it.
You
Love it.
You don't make a distinction between
No, I don't.
theater and
no,
opera?
I don't. No, I think some of it is. You know,
Wonderful.
there's good and there's bad in everything.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I know. I hate to shock people, but there's bad opera. There just is. You know, there's stuff that shouldn't be performed, but is. No, no, you can't have a list. I'm not going to send you a list of my least favorite operas, but because it's going to be probably your favorite, so I don't want to do that. But you know, like I got a chance to do a role called. It was Jerry Herman's first piece called Milk and Honey, and it was Israel's. It was Israel's bar mitzvah, and it was the 13th anniversary of Israel's, becoming a state, and he wrote this as a celebration for that, and I got to do the role of Frank in this, and it was I got the coolest music, and they had me at Hello because they told me that one of the guy that did it for the first time was Robert Weedy, who was, if you want to do a little bit of research, that's a great name from the past, who also did the first Tony in Most Happy Fella.
Oh wow!
And he was also a Met baritone, and he's on the roster having sung Rigoletto and all kinds of stuff. But he made his career as a big Broadway guy, and he was a huge man. He was like 6'4" or something like that. But yeah, I think those.
What are some of the crossover type roles that you've done? I know Sweeney Todd's a big one for you,
Sweeney
right?
Todd was wonderful. I've done that. I've done that a
great piece
couple
of theater.
times. Yeah, great piece of theater, and it's hard to sing because you have to be careful because you need to learn how to scream, because you must scream. You will scream. You'll get yourself carried away, and if you don't scream right, you're not going to finish the show. I would love to do Man of La Mancha. I would love to do Javert in Les Mis. I'm kind of lean towards some of the classics. I was up for an Emile Debec for about 20 seconds. I think Jekyll and Hyde would be really cool. I think Jekyll and Hyde would be a very interesting piece to do. I'm trying to think of some of the more modern ones, but people have talked to me about Shrek. Because I think that would be just it's a chance to use your Scottish accent to do. And just pieces like, there's great theater out there. There's some great music. I'm pushing to do Kismet, because Kismet is the music.
It doesn't get done a lot these days, does it? I don't see it a lot.
No, it's Baghdad. It's celebrating Baghdad, and I'm not certain if we're ready. But it would be worth it to give it a try. I've reached out to a couple of people, and they said they would, but that was before the pandemic hit, and so we don't know yet. We don't know.
So let's talk about the pandemic, where we all sit.
Sure.
The reason I started doing this show in general is because I was supposed to be traveling a lot this summer, doing lots of debuts, and they all got grounded. Vienna, Prague, and here we are.
Vienna and Prague.
This is my year. I set up these. It's worked 2 years to do it, but you know what? That's the way life goes.
Yeah, it is.
And I've discovered, the reason I started this was to talk to people like yourself, to talk about how are we handling this. I mean, it's devastating for all of us. Every performance is canceled.
Yeah,
financially, of course, but emotionally too.
Sure. I lost all of them. I lost the whole year, and I was supposed to do 3 or 4 things at the Metropolitan Opera this coming fall. I was supposed to do a Pagliacci in Detroit. I was supposed to do my first Lohengrin in Dallas, and that died a slow, painful death. And and the people in the Dallas were just as equally as devastated. The Metropolitan Opera was that me again?
No, that's one of my kids upstairs.
All right, shall I go get them?
No, they're probably fine. Like you, I have lots of teenagers.
I have
around.
many teenagers. They would have run in front of the camera already a couple times. Sit down.
My cats jumped on the show a couple times.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. But yeah, pandemic. Yeah, well, Prague though. Wow, Prague.
Never been Vienna or Prague, but
I did Salome in Prague in concert. Man, that's a beautiful city. Oh man.
I was looking forward to trying the Pilsner Urquell actually in there. What are you gonna do? But it's the type of thing where you see so much innovation. You see people doing different things. You mentioned Stephanie Blythe doing her recording just to keep herself together and to do something for her community. You've been doing a similar thing, though.
Well, she was my inspiration.
Okay.
In fact, my first one, the first one of these that I did was a shout out to Stephanie Blythe, and it still is, because she doesn't mean to be, but she's wildly inspirational. So I saw this and I said, I got to do something like this. What can I do? And I went to somebody that knows a lot about this stuff, and I said, is there some kind of an app on your phone that you can do for harmony? And they said, yeah, look up acapella. And I didn't know anything. And basically, my first, I don't know, bunches, my first 2-3 months of them, I would use my little kind of earphone microphone, which it's not a great quality. I'm sorry, Apple. I'm sorry, but it's not a great quality microphone. Fix it.